Thank you, and thank you for the introduction, but also for the hospitality and this workshop. I appreciate how much hard work goes into setting up and running these things. Okay, so oops, I better just bring up my slides. Oops. There we go. Okay, so good morning, everyone. As has just been introduced, my name is Mike Pidd. I'm Director of the Digital Humanities Institute at the University of Sheffield. We've been producing digital editions since the foundation of the Institute, which was about, I'd say, 30 years ago. So, yes, we remember. Sorry, is that better? Closer. Is that better? Okay, this is going to be awkward. Yeah, we're from the foundation of the Institute about 30 years ago now. So yes, we remember CD-ROMs and SGML, and we even remember when TI did not stand for Text Encoding Initiative, when it stood for Text Encoding for Interchange. Does anybody remember that? I knew that you would remember it. Good. Which is actually a more insightful acronym if you think about it. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about C21 editions. I'm going to be reading from a prepared statement. This is partly to keep me to time, but it's also because I sometimes find that English manuscript, medieval manuscript specialists, and particularly Chaucerians, can sometimes be a little bit precious and sensitive to some of these topics. So I like to use a prepared statement to avoid any fighting. Okay, so C21 Editions is a joint UK-Ireland digital humanities project funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council and the Irish Research Council. Consists of a project team at the University of Sheffield, University of Cork, University College Cork, and the University of Glasgow. As such, I will be presenting the work and findings of numerous individuals who have been responsible for the project's success. The C21 Editions project aims to advance the state-of-the-art in digital scholarly editing by first establishing the protocols and best practices of creating scholarly editions of born digital content, such as social media. And secondly, by exploring machine-assisted approaches to the editing of digital scholarly editions. So that first topic, I'm not going to talk about that today, but if anybody wants to know more about it, please feel free to ask me during the questions or during the break time. So in this talk, I will report on the second strand of the C21 Editions project, where we explored the use of generative AI and machine learning alongside open linked data in order to create an online teaching edition of the Pardoner's Prologue and Tale from Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. The edition features a diplomatic transcription, a modern translation, scholarly commentaries and annotations, and automatic text-to-speech narration of the Middle English text, and teaching activities that are aimed at training students to engage more critically with AI. And I'll show you the results of these approaches, and I'm going to kind of discuss their value and consider their implications for future scholarly editing. So, moving on. So, why did we set out to create, to use AI to create an edition of Chaucer? Well, there are a number of questions that we wanted answers to. First of all, can AI emulate the critical thinking that is central to scholarly editing, leaving the editor to concentrate on what we would describe as creative thinking? Now, scholarly editors generally consider their work to be sacrosanct, requiring expert knowledge, reasoning, and judgment that can only be the domain of a few special people who have spent their entire careers building such expertise. The idea that AI can reproduce this goes to the very heart of many people's anxieties about AI. But we suspect that critical thinking can be reproduced, but that creative thinking cannot. And therefore, any system that assists with critical thinking leaves the editor with more time for creative thinking. And these are by creative thinking, I mean editorial judgments that are not based on an assessment of evidence or on anything that has necessarily been written and thought about before, just pure creativity. The second question we wanted to answer is, can AI be used to help scale up the size and scope of scholarly editions? So scholarly editions are what we tend to refer to in Sheffield as an industrial craft process. We use digital technologies in order to create them, a form of industrialization, but the way in which we go about using such technologies makes the process of editing still very much a bespoke craft process. As a result, scholarly editions are often small, curated, highly specialized intellectual objects. So the presentation of sources is often limited due to issues of time and resource. For example, one would never expect to see a scholarly digital edition of the 19th century British Library newspapers, because this resource runs into millions and millions of pages. So we wanted to know if AI can be used to help scale up the size and scope of scholarly editions. Can AI bring scholarly editions closer to the scale of mass digitization, but retain the accuracy of remediation and high quality critical apparatus that are often the benchmark of a scholarly edition? Our next question was, can AI and open data be used to support the sharing and reuse of knowledge? So we wanted to know if AI can be combined with open knowledge-based data sources for author commentaries and annotations, etc. And again, our aim here is to explore the emulation of critical thinking, to free up time for an editor to pursue creative thinking. And because much critical apparatus is, one could argue, not original. Is an AI Chaucer better than no Chaucer? This was the other question we wanted to explore. Now, some people groan when they hear that AI is being applied to Chaucer. There are those within the discipline of Chaucer studies who no doubt feel that this is an affront to their expertise, who believe that the outputs will be of lower quality and that it is somehow debasing Chaucer. But Chaucer studies is dying. Few people are interested in reading, let alone studying Chaucer anymore. Now, when I came through Heathrow Airport during the summer, and I went into W.H. Smith's, the bookstore there, I didn't see the shelves plastered with works by the father of English poetry. There was nothing by Chaucer in W.H. Smith's. He isn't on the top 10 best reads for the summer. So surely, and probably won't be for next summer either, surely, maybe the summer after that, surely an AI Chaucer is better than no Chaucer. Surely any Chaucer is better than no Chaucer. So we wanted to find out if, good or bad, AI can be used as a vehicle to re-engage people, especially students, with Chaucer and Middle English literature and language. We also wanted to know if Chaucer himself could teach us something about AI. So, our edition is a prototype, so we focused on one prologue and tale. That was the Pardoner. It has a suitable length and detail and deals with subjects that resonate with audiences today around sexuality and gender identity. We opted to create a teaching edition rather than a research edition. Scholarly editions that are intended for research, such as genetic and variorum editions, present considerable opportunities for machine-assisted approaches, but we felt that a teaching edition would require us to undertake the types of editorial work that are common across all types of scholarly digital editing projects. So presenting the text, annotating the text, creating commentaries and topic guides, etc. We also included a spoken version, which we admit is somewhat exclusive to the needs of Middle English teachers and students, but it was too good an opportunity to miss. So when we applied for this grant, it was pre-COVID. We had envisaged developing machine learning tasks which would perform specific functions on the text, like developing a domain-specific large language model and learning how to translate Middle English into modern English, or scouring tasks such as scouring huge academic databases and learning how and teaching it how to annotate and comment on Middle English poetry. That's what we started off thinking that we would do, but when the funding was awarded, generative AI chatbots and interfaces to large language models, obviously ChatGPT, had arrived, and the landscape shifted dramatically. So instead of investing hours in training an AI system, we opted to explore the value of generative AI in edition making. So generative AI, straight out of the box, accessible to everybody. How useful would that be? We figured that we could easily spend 3 years developing quite bespoke edition-specific machine learning tasks, but actually these would not be very useful to the majority of scholarly editors who lack the required technical expertise in order to implement them. So instead we decided to explore ChatGPT and other generative AI chatbots, since they're readily available to editors and are intuitive to use. I should just add that we didn't opt to explore the creation of new transcriptions from scratch using AI methods. We kind of felt that the domain of handwritten recognition, handwritten text recognition technology was sufficiently advanced, notably Transcribus, for example. So we used an existing transcription created by the Norman Blake editions of the Canterbury Tales, which was actually my first ever job in academia, when we created the DHI in 1992. And you can download these transcriptions if you're interested from the DHI's data service. So, our development process first consisted of getting to know the audience. We conducted interviews and focus groups with university teachers and undergraduate students of Chaucer and Middle English literature and language in the UK, but also in the USA, where actually Chaucer is taught more widely than it is in the UK now, irritatingly, but there you go. Our choice of features represents their interests, not necessarily ours. And it's important to understand that we opted for what we call a fail-fast approach. So we only had 1 year for this part of the project. So each feature of the edition, such as the translation, the annotations, the spoken version, etc., was developed rapidly with different technologies and approaches being tested, assessed, and then a final decision made as to how best to deploy it within the prototype. So basically we spent 1 month per feature. So it was like a very rapid research and development approach. And we documented the process for each feature. We felt that that was an important part of the project. It's only through this process will we be able to reflect upon and share our successes, mistakes, and what we have learned. For example, we tested multiple generative AI systems on the task of producing a modern English translation using many different prompts and parameters. So we wanted to understand if generative AI could serve as an effective assistant or co-pilot in the process of creating a translation. Does generative AI support much of the heavy lifting, the basic, repetitive, tedious, simple task of translation? Does it free up the editor's time to focus on the more problematic aspects of translation? Put simply, does generative AI save the editor time, or is the editor's task of correcting the generative AI's errors more time-consuming than the editor simply creating everything from scratch? And there's quite a lot of, we come across this all the time, don't we, in technology, that actually it's just quicker and easier to just do it yourself from scratch. So in order to answer these questions, we needed to record this process. Every human editorial intervention on the generative AI output we recorded, for example, so that we could then make this data available, and all of this will become available shortly. So I'm just going to, first of all, I'm just going to, is this on? Right, okay, so I'm just going to show you this very quickly. So this is a prototype, okay? So it's not very, it's not pretty or anything like that, but quite simply we have the original text here. Oops, there we go. There's the original text. We have the modern translation. Oops, that was. As you can see, it's got some glitches. This is a modern translation that was produced by the generative AI, and then we can, oops, if we go back to the original text, there we go. You can see that there are, a range of, it's like, I think this is more my use of this touchpad. So there you go. So all this information you're seeing on the right-hand side was generated by ChatGPT. Okay, and then aside from the inline annotations, we also have topics. That this is sort of when we've glossed multiple lines. There we go, literary confessions. And then if a student or a teacher wants to know more, they can click through. And oops, and what I can't show you here because it's logged me out is we have full guides to the. Oh, okay, that was work. Seriously, this was working when I tested it on this machine about an hour ago. But basically we have sort of lengthy guides to the text. Okay, so back to this. So, oops. So I'm just going to talk you through some of the features and some of the things that we found. So very quickly, first of all, we had to decide what sort of translation we wanted to produce. Did we want ChatGPT to try and preserve the original structure and meter, or did we want the translation to be closer to the modern structure? And further away from the Middle English meter, and as you can see here, the point being is that in the second version you can retain the rhyming structure, but ChatGPT goes a little bit more kind of off-piste, I think, because you're giving the chatbot more freedom. We actually went for option number 1, which was to preserve the original structure and meter. This was a way of really trying to kind of rein in ChatGPT slightly. So the rhyming cannot necessarily be retained, but it does have to work more carefully at trying to produce words that are more, I guess, precise translations of what it's seeing in the original source. So here's an example: breeches and underpants. I guess, I don't know if you've come across the word breeches before. Breeches. As I say to my wife when I'm pulling away in the car, hold on to your breeches. So in the manuscript version, the original, thou wouldest make me kiss thine older breech. Okay, you'll make me kiss your old breeches. ChatGPT comes up with you would make me kiss your old breeches. Okay, which is a pretty good translation. After editorial intervention, because although ChatGPT is accurate in the translation, the reality is that most students today, we feel, would never have come across the word breeches or breeches. It tends to be more of a dialect word, certainly in British English. So we've changed it to you would make me kiss your old underpants. Okay, And an alternative editorial intervention, as we can see here, would be to make it sound slightly medieval and Chaucerian by including thou and thine. I'm slightly uncomfortable with that decision. That wasn't my decision. Lewd people. Okay, so this is a phrase that we get in the Pardoner. So what we discovered was that ChatGPT is aware of meaning change from the Middle English to modern English. So we can see here we asked it to translate "and when the lured people is doing a set," and ChatGPT's answer is "and when the ignorant people are seated down." And then if you go on and ask ChatGPT, well, what does lewd mean then? I.e., why have you given us this translation? It correctly says that as you say here, in Middle English, lewd generally meant ignorant or uneducated, often referring to people who were not learned or literate, and that importantly, it did not carry the modern connotation of being obscene or indecent. So we can kind of use ChatGPT to produce annotations that communicate meaning change. Here's another one, a jolly wench. Okay, ChatGPT is unaware of when we ask ChatGPT what does the word wench mean, it says that it typically referred to a young woman or girl of lower social status. It simply meant a servant girl or a young woman in general. And then it recognises that over time the term evolved and acquired the more negative connotations that it has today. So again, it recognises that in the Middle Ages this was not necessarily a derogatory term in the way that it is today. And again, when we ask what does the word wench mean today, it gives us this explanation here, which again is accurate. Now, then the thing that we found was that what it hadn't told us that we were interested in, particularly because our audience includes US teachers and students, is the fact that in the 17th century, the word wench became a very racialized word used against enslaved black women. If we then ask ChatGPT, I won't repeat it now, but I won't demonstrate it now, but if we then ask ChatGPT, well, can you tell me what wench meant in 17th century American English in reference to enslaved black women? It actually gives you a very good and quite an insightful explanation of that. So it is possible to pull that information out. I think what's key here is that you discover that you can't just use this tool kind of blindly. You still have to know what you're looking for and what you're kind of asking it to do for you. You can't really get it to do all of the thinking for you. So again, there's then the question of, well, if its original response did not include that reference to 17th century enslaved women, is it quicker for me to ask it to focus on that as well, or is it actually quicker for me to just go and write that as an editor and just miss out that part of the process? So here we can see what how this was set up. So I won't go through all of this, but you can see that in a lot of what we were doing, we were using the prompts we used alongside Wikidata to create annotations about specific named entities, people, and places, and sin as conceived in the past. And we also brought in the Middle English Dictionary and the Oxford English Dictionary where relevant. So here's another example. This is an example of the actual translation process. So on the left, in the green is what we is what we asked ChatGPT to do. So these are the these are the instructions. So basically, can you write a summary of this collection of lines, and can you make use of this Wikidata data as well? And on the right is the output from ChatGPT. So then, again, on the left, this is the output from ChatGPT, and then we recorded what editorial interventions we had to make. So the editorial interventions are in orange on the right. So you can see that actually for this type of edition we didn't have to make many editorial interventions. So that was the translation and the annotations. We then played with text to speech. Okay, simply because can you get an AI system to automatically read out Middle English poetry in the original? Was just too much of a fun thing to not want to do. So very quickly, we used a Chaucer studio recording of the Pardoner's Prologue and Tale as our base text. We ran it through, bearing in mind it's slightly odd because in our example we had to have a human recording in the first place, but we used this in order to run it through Allosaurus, which is a pre-trained universal phone recognizer to generate IPA tokens rather. We coded the tokens using speech synthesis markup language. We ran that data through Amazon Polly, which is the text to speech AI tool. We experimented with different languages, so English, Dutch, German, to try and achieve the correct intonation, all the kind of specialized sounds in late Middle English. And because we discovered that all Middle English pronunciations are present in Amazon Polly, but we also discovered that one of the problems is that those pronunciations are segregated by the different language sets, and the Amazon Polly business model, because it's for text to speech, because it's designed for customer support systems, you're never going to have a situation where somebody is providing customer support in German and they need to suddenly start introducing Welsh pronunciations into their responses, for example. So the language sets are physically separated within Amazon Polly. So we found that we couldn't actually draw upon the full range of Middle English pronunciations. So in the end, and it's hard to recreate the performative aspect. So in the end, we asked a friend of mine, Professor Jeremy Smith, who is an eminent scholar of Chaucer and Middle English, to provide us with a recording instead, and we decided to compare the two. Now, just to say, Jeremy's the one on the right. Okay? So this is and I'll kind of show you the how successful or not that was, if this will still work. Oh man, I feel rather guilty because the amount of time to set up the audio of this. Apologies. Sorry, I am going to have to just bear with me very quickly until I put the password back in. Right, okay, so this is, let's go down a bit. So we call this character Brian Polly. So this is, well, we'll do Brian first.
At this Bunve washer in any weller. If coo or cough, a shape, our axa sweller, that ony warm hath at, our warm eastunga, tak white.
Okay, so pretty excruciating. And this is Jack. So this is what it should sound like.
Wash is tunga, and it is whole and own and for the more, of pockies and of scab and every sore. Shall every shape be whole that of this weller, drinketh a drochter, tak a cape.
Okay, so that's what we were trying to achieve, and obviously we failed miserably with that. But as I say, it was too good an opportunity to miss. So as I say, we recorded every intervention that we made. So what did we learn? Well, we learned that generative AI is actually an effective co-pilot for translation, able to produce more than 60% of the final text, as you can see on the first column. So you can you can see just over about 30% of editorial intervention. So we thought that was pretty good. It meant that editorial time can be devoted to checking the output for quality and intervening where terms are more problematic in their meaning. Generative AI, we also discovered, is extremely effective at producing critical apparatus when the task involves auto-summarization of human-created content. And here, where are we? Yeah, so from column 3, 4, 5, you can see that there was very, very little editorial intervention there. And in a way, that's to be expected. The quality of the output is going to be determined by the quality of the human-created input. Now, our edition is a teaching edition intended as an introduction for students, but we can see that this approach will also work if we can provide the system with access to more highly specialized, scholarly, curated content. But clearly, a system that uses generative AI to enable editors to generate annotations and commentaries needs to, first of all, have access to much more recent content and information that might not necessarily be prolific on the web, and we kind of all know this now about these types of large language models. Particularly so that an editor can factor in the latest findings as published in recent journal articles. But we also discovered that, we also felt that, the editor needs to have access to, I guess, would be some kind of point-and-click tool that simplifies the workflow in order to achieve the time-saving benefits of using a generative AI system, i.e. a tool that enables an editor to highlight text within the edition and prompt the generative AI to write a commentary. So the way we approached this was still actually very manual and labor-intensive, because we're having to write prompts, we're having to think about how to craft the prompts, etc. It became clear that the emphasis for our work had shifted to prompt engineering, as seems to be sort of a phenomenon that's happening across a range of industries and sectors affected by generative AI. So thinking about how you improve the task of prompt prompt crafting, we felt was really very important. And certainly, as we found with the with the case of this the 17th century use of the word wench, the editor still needs to have that editorial expertise. One cannot use, we're not suggesting in any way that generative AI means that you can produce digital scholarly editions of texts on subjects that you know nothing about, because it's just not going to be, the results are just not going to be as as successful. And obviously, as you can see from the second column, the text-to-speech process still has a very, very long way to go in the realm of late Middle English language, and whether it will ever improve, I doubt that Amazon or others will ever find an effective business model in order to devote the many millions of dollars that would be required in order to improve it. So what did we learn? Well, we returned to our project's original questions. What does this mean for the editor? Well, machine-assisted approaches are an effective co-pilot for editors, able to emulate the process of critical thinking in carefully defined circumstances, with their chief benefit being speed and time and saving time. And given more sophisticated language models that have access to more specialized knowledge bases, it's also possible that a generative AI system could propose information about a text that is not necessarily already known by the editor. I think that's potentially one of the great values going forward. The implication of all this is that an AI pilot could enable us to scale up the size and scope of scholarly editions, and editors are left with more time to attend to the more problematic areas of an edition and to contribute their own creative thinking. That is, the ideas that nobody, including a computer, would otherwise come up with. So for an editor, in one sense, they become one step removed from the physical hands-on task of editing, but their role becomes, well, more editorial, in that their position of authority is that of overseeing the work of their co-pilot and defining and questioning the methodologies being used, AI or editorial. It all becomes much more critical. An editor becomes, with this kind of process, we sort of felt that an editor becomes more akin to, it's a bit like when you're marking student essays or dissertations, it becomes that role, questioning. You haven't done the laborious work of producing the content. You're there questioning what's being produced, and you're critiquing and commenting it. So there we go. And so finally, to the last question that we had on our project, isn't AI Chaucer better than no Chaucer? Yes. Tempted to finish there, but so in consulting our users and developing the features of our teaching edition of Chaucer, we also discovered something unexpected. We discovered that we can use AI to create an edition of Chaucer, but we can also ask students to use AI themselves to create their own edition of Chaucer. And we were completely not expecting what came next. This has a double effect. It enables students to learn about Chaucer's language more effectively because they are seeing the results of an AI system, including its mishaps. So they become more critical readers of Chaucer. So rather than just presenting them with the text, if we get them to create the text, the translation themselves, it requires a closer engagement with the original, and that has all the kind of the positive effects that one is looking for as a teacher. It encourages students also to become more critical of generative AI. Through its mishaps in translation and annotation, students develop a more critical understanding of what generative AI is and why it is producing the answers that it does. I think there's something about the distance between Chaucer's English and our English that produces this more critical focus and interest amongst students that is not necessarily there when they are using generative AI to produce, modern essays on modern topics, which I'm sure they don't do, but if they were to do that, I'm sure they would not be as critical in their engagement with the topic. So as a result of this discovery, we intend to incorporate learning activities within the edition which invite the students to prompt ChatGPT to create new translations and annotations, and then we're going to encourage the students to critique what the AI has generated. So my very, very final sentence is that who would have thought that Chaucer would have been able to teach students about AI? Thank you.